Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Vanilla Sugar Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Dylan Morgan, aka Vanilla Sugar. Today's first headline is in the NFL world. Clay Matthews signed with the St. Louis. Oh my God, did I just say that? Los Angeles Rams on a 2-year deal. Clay Matthews has 189 career sacks, 366 career tackles, and has played all 16 games last season. So I thought that was good. Since he has had some issues with injuries, much like any football player does. Clay Matthews, I'm sure, is very popular to amateur football fans who don't watch it that much. He's still a very popular player, just a beast at linebacker position. Great pickup by the Rams, who could not get it done in the Super Bowl, but are reloading for next year. Also just recently signed Blake Bortles. I don't know if I talked about that on my podcast or not, but they signed Blake Bortles to back up Jared Goff. Just making good moves to go back and do it again, go back to the Super Bowl and maybe win this time. But it's way too far away to make any predictions toward the NFL season. I'm sure we'll get to that kind of video when it comes around that time. So now to the MLB. Alex Bregman signed a 6-year extension with the Astros. $100 million for 6 years. 6.9 wins above replacement last season. 31 home runs 31 home runs last season, 170 hits with a .286 average last season. So another great extension for another team, another baseball player getting a lot of money. We've been seeing that a lot in the past 2 weeks. So yeah, a great add-on or I guess a great keep by the Astros to keep Alex Bregman. Astros have been very successful in their past few seasons, and he's been the guy always getting hits for them. 6.9 wins above replacement is great. Great hitter, apparently, according to the stats for last season. 31 home runs and 170 hits. So speaking of the MLB, they had a rare case of not a huge baseball follower, so this took me off guard. I thought the MLB started, but it turns out the Mariners and the Athletics played in Tokyo this morning. On the East Coast, it was 5:30 a.m. is when it started. In Tokyo, I'm assuming it was a regular primetime game. So I believe it counted as a regular season game, although there is no regular season games right now for any other team until around Memorial Day, I think, is when MLB usually kicks off. So I saw that on my Instagram feed this morning, highlights from that, and it said first home run of the season or something, and I was half sleeping still. Was a little confused on why there was highlights of MLB at 5:30 or 7 was when I saw it. So yeah, anyways, just in case anyone was confused about that, MLB game this morning at 5:30 a.m. It was in Tokyo, that's why it was at 5:30 a.m. It, I believe, counts as regular season game, but regular season is nowhere near starting yet. There's still a lot of spring training games today. Anyway, that was a whole confusion for me. Just had to put that in. All right, now to the NBA. JJ Redick had 27 points and 10 rebounds last night in the Sixers' 118-114 win over the Hornets. Good win for the Sixers, who are trying to climb the Eastern Conference ladder. That's crazy that JJ Redick had 10 rebounds. I'd like to see the highlights of those 10 rebounds. That little sharpshooter can grab those rebounds. But next game, James Harden had 31 points, 10 assists in the Rockets' 121-105 win over the Hawks. Anyone surprised about any of that? Not me. Next game, Chris Middleton scored 30 and had 10 rebounds in Bucks' 115-101 win over the Lakers. And good night for Middleton. I've talked about this before. The Bucks have a lot of guys that are great supporting cast to Giannis. Brook Lopez is a big name for me. I think that it's crazy how much he's helped this season after kind of looking like he was heading towards becoming that old guy that just bounced around teams and we forget about. And here he is now, so helpful to the Bucks as they are the best team in the league right now. They had to beat the Lakers for sure, though. That was a must win. And they pulled it through with a supporting cast member and Chris Middleton, scoring 30. The Warriors won 117 to 107. Steph Curry scored 22 points in the third quarter out of his total of 34, I believe. I don't know why I didn't put that down. They beat the Wolves. Yeah, good for the Warriors to see Curry out there scoring. Uh, Probably a usual sight for them, but any win's a good win right now because they've been dropping easy ones. So I think right now they got to claim that dominance back, even if it is over less talented teams. The Nets had a crazy comeback. They were down by as much as 28. They beat the Kings 123 to 121. Rondé Hollis Jefferson hit a game-winning layup. D'Angelo Russell had 27 in the fourth out of his 44 career-high total. Crazy game for the Nets. I do daily pick'ems on 2K, and I picked the Kings to win that, so sucks for me, but it was a good win for the Nets. Um, it's a crazy season for D'Angelo Russell. I love watching this out of this kid who got put on the wrong team, and sorry about that little pause. The Nets though are having a great season, very successful for them. I believe at the beginning of the season I was thinking they might be heading towards a rebrand, but this has definitely resurged Brooklyn City. Yeah, great win by the Nets, showing their underdog powers. Angelo Russell showing his leadership. Love the win. The Clippers beat the Pacers 115 to 109. Montrezl Harrell had 20 points and 12 rebounds. Good win by the Clippers. Any win's a good win by them as they are lower in the standings. Actually moving up though now. I believe it was this season they were playing really good. Towards the middle of the season became irrelevant again. But I think in the beginning they were first in the West. Yeah, okay, they were, and so now they're showing even without Tobias Harris, they're still that team that was first in the West at the beginning of the year, behind Patrick Beverley, who's been in the league forever. Great defender, has so much heart when he plays. Definitely the right guy to be leading you into the playoffs. So now, hang on one second. So since this podcast is a little bit shorter, I've decided to read out my bracket for the March Madness. This is not based off of anything. This is literally based off the name of the colleges. Like, understand, do not copy this. This is definitely not going to be 100% right. But even the best sports analysis can't even guess it right. So, I mean, who is gonna, but here we go. Duke beating 16th seed, whoever comes out of that game. I believe they're playing tonight. I got UCF beating VCU. Liberty beating Mississippi State. Big upset there. Virginia Tech beating St. Louis. Maryland beating Belmont. LSU beating Yale. Minnesota beating Louisville. Michigan State beating Bradley. Gonzaga beating F. Dickinson. Syracuse beating Baylor. Murray State beating Marquette. Florida State beating Vermont. Buffalo beating ASU or SJU, depending on who wins tonight. Texas Tech beating North Kentucky. Florida beating Nevada. Michigan beating Montana. Virginia beating Gardner-Webb. Oklahoma beating Ole Miss. Oregon over Wisconsin. Kansas State over UC Irvine. St. Mary's upsetting Villanova. Purdue beating Old Dominion. Cincinnati beating Iowa. Tennessee beating Colgate. Oh my God. North Carolina beating Iona. Washington beating Utah State. Auburn beating New Mexico State. Kansas beating Northeastern. Ohio State beating Iowa State. Houston beating Georgia State. Seton Hall beating Wilford. Kentucky beating Abel Christian. Duke beating UCF in the second round. Liberty beating Virginia Tech beating Liberty. Maryland beating LSU. Michigan State beating Minnesota, Syracuse upsetting Gonzaga, Florida State beating Murray State, Texas Tech beating Buffalo, Michigan beating Florida, Virginia beating Oklahoma, Kansas State beating Oregon, St. Mary's beating Purdue, upsetting Tennessee beating Cincinnati, North Carolina beating Washington, Kansas beating Auburn, Houston beating Ohio State, Kentucky beating Seton Hall, Duke over Virginia Tech in the Sweet 16, Michigan State over Maryland, Florida State over Syracuse, Michigan over Texas Tech, Virginia over Kansas State, Tennessee over St. Mary's, North Carolina over Kansas, Kentucky over Houston, Duke beating Michigan State, Michigan beating Florida State, Tennessee beating Virginia, North Carolina beating Kentucky. That makes my final four: Duke versus Michigan, North Carolina versus Tennessee, and I got Duke and North Carolina in the national championship game. North Carolina winning 71-67. That was a lot. Only takeaways you really need to know is I got North Carolina winning it. Yeah. Final four: Duke, Michigan, Tennessee, North Carolina. That's another important thing. If I get that Final Four right, that would be the crazy one. I think one Syracuse beating Gonzaga. I actually heard a lot of people who put the same thing. Syracuse and Gonzaga, obviously both making it past the first round, and Syracuse beating Gonzaga. I actually heard a few people say that. But that's just what we have to do nowadays since we see so many upsets. Got to just kind of say, well, maybe that'll happen. So, only other thing I wanted to mention, I got the Alex Paps podcast coming out soon. I don't know if I'm going to write an article with it yet. It's a lot easier to just talk rather than write. Maybe on the weekend I'll start the article for it, but definitely the podcast. For those of you who don't know, I was able to get a few questions in with a minor league player. Just to talk about minor league baseball. I think it's a very interesting topic. So, yeah. As always, this is Vanilla Sugar signing out.